So looking at example 3 now, you don't always have necessarily an equation. You could have just a table of values. Now, all of this is, when we were thinking about the graph, these are just ordered pairs. So if I were to graph these for my f of x, the ordered pairs that I have are -2, 3, -6, 6, 0, 20, 9, -5, 11, -3. I have no idea what equation created these numbers, and I cannot assume that there are any more numbers. So this essentially is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on a graph. Okay, literally like just go over to -2 up to 3, plot the point. So there's only 5 points. Now, g of x uses the same exact x values, but has different y values. Okay, but it also only has 5 points. So if I'm going to find f of -2 plus g of -2, I have to first go, where's my x is -2? -2 gives me 3. So f of -2 is 3. G of -2, who can tell me what g of -2 is? 7. Does everybody see where we're getting that 7? And now if I add those two numbers together, I get 10. Exactly. So here I'm going to take f of 0 and I'm going to multiply it by g of 0. So f of 0, and we were talking about how if x is 0, these points are going to lie on the y-axis. So if you were plotting the points, you would see them on the y-axis because the x coordinate is 0. So f of 0 is 20, and g of 0 is 10. And so if we multiply those together, what do we get? 200. Okay. What about f of 11 times g of 11? What's that going to be? F of 11 is -3. G of 11 is +3. I get that from the table. And then if I multiply those together, I get -9. Okay, so here I'm going to take f of 9 and I'm going to divide it by g of 9. F of 9 is, and g of 9 is, and so what happens when we divide by 0? Undefined. Okay, so if you were going to say, what is the domain of f of x divided by g of x, what numbers could you use from the chart? Yeah, and would that mean that the only thing you're going to, or actually the only x value you can't use is x equals 9, right? So tell me the x values that you could use. That would be the domain. -2, -6, 0, and 11. So you see the difference? You wouldn't say all real numbers because these are the only x values that are given. You have to restrict the domain by not using g of 9 because otherwise, if you do that, you will be dividing by 0 and you'll get undefined. Okay, so if I was going to say, what's the domain of, what's the domain of f of x plus g of x? In other words, what numbers could I use in place of x? And would you say all real numbers? No, you would only be able to use these because if I said find f of 20, what is f of 20 from the chart? There is no x equals 20. So here, again, that would be does not exist. It's undefined in this sense because the only x values that we have are -2, -6, 0, 9, and 11, right? So if you were asked the domain of the two functions added together, you could only use the x values that were given. You wouldn't have you couldn't say all real numbers because there's not all real x values in the chart. Okay. So that would be how we would look at the table of values. And then the next thing would be, how do we do this if we have a graph? Well, a graph is nothing but a collection of ordered pairs. Same thing as the table, right? And then with the equations that we had before, the equations can create graphs and can create ordered pairs in the table as well. So, and then we know how they were generated from the equation. From the graph, we simply have to find our x values and then go up to the graph to find our y values. So let's look at this one. This one is going to be f of -2 plus g of -2. So to find f of -2, how would I do that? Yes, I go to this line, which is y equals f of x, and then I go to x equals -2, go down to the graph, and who can tell me what that value is in that ordered pair? -5, good. So f of -2 is equal to -5. How do I find g of -2? Go over to -2, up to the g of x graph, and who can tell me what is g of -2? Isn't it 3? Okay, and if I add those two numbers together, I get -2. Okay, I'm actually going to have you guys try a few of those, and then we'll come back and see what we got.